Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission here, as always, is pretty straightforward. Take complex source material, dig into it, and turn it into knowledge you can actually use right away.
That's the goal.
And today, we've got a really interesting linguistic challenge lined up. We're tackling C2 vocabulary, that really high-level English that separates people who are just proficient from those who sound genuinely articulate, sophisticated even.
Absolutely right. And we're working from quite a list here, 50 advanced words. These are the kinds of words that, you find absolutely everywhere in academic research, political commentary, serious journalism.
Right.
So if you've been putting in the hours on your language skills, really pushing towards mastery, well, this deep dive is definitely for you. These are the words that take your writing, your speaking from just functional to actually persuasive, powerful.
Exactly. And we're definitely not just going to read out 50 definitions. I mean, what's the point of that, right? That's not really learning. Instead, the idea is to build conceptual clusters. Think of it like creating mental maps. So when you think about, say, effort, a whole group of related C2 words about commitment and strategy just pops into your head. It's meant to be a shortcut, really, a way to sound instantly well-informed, not by just cramming definitions, but by understanding how these words function together.
And what's really fascinating, I think, is that this kind of advanced vocabulary isn't just about sounding smarter, although, that helps.
Sure.
It's really about precision. These words let you express really nuanced ideas, shades of meaning that simpler synonyms just can't quite capture. So we'll explore not just what they mean, but how they connect, how they contrast, basically, how they form the blueprint for really powerful communication.
Okay, sounds great. Let's jump right into our first conceptual cluster then. This one focuses on, intense strategic effort. We're calling it the commitment cluster.
That's the one.
These are the verbs that signal serious intent. Right. Long-term effort, and the necessary steps involved in big actions.
Right. So we'll kick off with strategic action and the kind of energy you need for it. We're linking two key words here, endeavor and exert.
Endeavor. I like that word. It sounds quite formal, significant. Our source defines it as making a serious effort, striving, attempting. The example given is academic, often. Students endeavor to reach a band 9 in IELTS writing. But why endeavor? Why not just say try? What's the extra layer?
Good question. The key difference really lies in, I'd say, the persistence involved and the scale of the goal. Endeavor implies the sustained, determined effort. You're striving towards something difficult, often something high stakes, and usually over a decent period of time.
Okay.
So when a government endeavors to reform the healthcare system, let's say, well, that's not just a weekend project, is it?
No, definitely not.
It's a long-term structural commitment. Whereas if you're just trying to write an email, you might give up if you get stuck. But if you're endeavoring to complete your PhD thesis, you push through those inevitable tough patches. It signals a much higher level of dedication to whoever's reading or listening.
And that kind of strategic dedication, that endeavoring, it needs fuel, it needs resources, which brings us to exert, I suppose. Applying effort or force. You must exert full effort.
Exactly. Endeavoring is the big picture. It's the strategic mindset, the determination, the long-term aim. Exerting is the immediate application of power to make it happen. It could be physical, intellectual, diplomatic.
It was like elbow grease.
Sort of, yeah. A country might endeavor to achieve regional stability, maybe, but to actually get there, it has to exert diplomatic pressure or maybe exert financial influence, use its resources.
I see. So the two work together. Endeavor is the serious goal.
The commitment.
And exert is the active work needed to get there.
Precisely. They define the serious commitment and the means of executing it.
Okay. Moving on from the effort itself to maybe the consequences or requirements we have entail. This feels like a really crucial one for, say, analytical writing, when you're discussing complex causes or what's needed for something.
Oh, absolutely vital. Entail basically means to involve or require something as a necessary part or consequence. It often highlights prerequisites that are, maybe complicated or not immediately obvious. The example given was achieving fluency entails consistent daily practice. What that suggests is practice isn't just helpful, it's like fundamentally linked to the outcome. You can't really have one without the other. It's a more formal way of saying X requires Y, often pointing to those hidden complexities.
Okay, so let me see if I've got this. If I say building a house requires bricks, It's pretty simple, right?
Straightforward. Yeah.
But if I say building a major tech startup entails navigating complex venture capital funding rounds and attracting world-class engineering talent, I'm using entail to signal that the requirements are really dense, significant, maybe even challenging, not just simple steps.
You've got it, exactly. Entail elevates the whole discussion. It focuses attention on the implicit demands of a situation, the things that automatically come with it. So when a political decision entails unforeseen social disruption, you're saying that disruption is a necessary, maybe complicated, but definitely linked consequence of the action itself.
Right. Powerful word. Okay, now let's look at how ideas or projects actually get put together and then, well, started. The verbs for creation and development: formulate and initiate.
Right. So formulate. Think systematic construction. It means creating or developing something methodically, designing, planning, devising, often with intellectual effort.
Oh, methodical.
Yeah. You often see it in research contexts. Researchers formulated a new hypothesis based on the preliminary data. It implies structure, precision, real thought went into the design phase. It's like meticulously drawing up the blueprint.
So if I'm just scribbling ideas on a napkin, that's maybe brainstorming.
Probably, yeah.
But if I'm carefully outlining a step-by-step marketing strategy with budgets and timelines, then I'm formulating it. That systematic element is the key C2 difference.
Absolutely. That's the weight it carries. And then once you've formulated that plan, that blueprint,
You need to start it.
you move to initiate. Exactly. To initiate just means to begin something, to start it, launch it, get it going. The company initiated a major recruitment drive. It marks that transition from the planning stage, the formulation, into active, measurable action. The idea is now actually happening.
From blueprint to building site. Sort of.
It's a way to put it, yeah.
Okay. Now, shifting gears slightly, how do we talk about accepting or supporting ideas once they are in motion? We have embrace and foster. These sound quite positive.
They are, generally. To embrace something is to accept or support it willingly. And willingly is the key part here. It implies a kind of warm, proactive acceptance. It's not just grudging compliance. The example. Societies must embrace renewable energy sources. When you embrace an idea, you're really taking it on board, committing to it, whether personally or maybe as an institution.
So it's the difference between, say, reluctantly installing solar panels because there's a subsidy and actively embracing the whole philosophy of sustainable living. That feels like a deeper shift in attitude.
That's a perfect contrast. Exactly. And once an idea is embraced, you often want to help it grow, right? To succeed. And that's where foster comes in.
To nurture it.
Precisely. To foster means to promote growth or development, to nurture, to encourage, think. Mentorship programs foster talent within the organization, or good teachers foster a love of learning.
So foster is kind of inherently about creating the right conditions, isn't it? You don't just foster success in a vacuum. You foster the environment for success. You set up the structures, maybe the curriculum, the company culture, the support systems that are specifically designed to encourage that positive outcome.
Exactly right. It's all about proactive cultivation. Making sure the elements needed for something positive to really take root and, well, flourish, that's another word we'll get to, are actually in place.
Okay. And finally, in this first cluster, we look at, subtle intent, like calling things forward, whether it's trying to attract customers or bringing ideas. We've got entice and invoke.
Yeah, this is an interesting pair. Entice is all about attraction, usually based on offering some kind of pleasure or advantage. It's about luring, tempting someone. Think marketing. Special offers entice shoppers to make impulse purchases. It speaks directly to self-interest, often in a commercial context.
Right, the lure of a bargain.
And then invoke. Well, that's almost its intellectual or formal counterpart. To invoke means to call upon something for support or justification or maybe inspiration. You cite it, you summon it, often appealing to a higher authority or principle.
Like in an argument.
Exactly. Lawyers often invoke legal precedents to support their case, or the speaker invoked the memory of historical heroes to inspire the audience.
Wow, okay. The contrast is really stark then. Both are about calling something forward, like you said. But the intent is totally different.
Completely.
A shop entices you with a discount that's transactional, appealing to your immediate desire.
Yeah, your wallet.
But a writer invokes history that's appealing to principle, authority, shared values.
That's it. Understanding that difference is absolutely key if you want to analyze persuasive language, whether it's in politics, advertising, anywhere really.
That really does set the stage nicely for our next section. If this commitment cluster was about the doing words, the verbs of action, This next group, the assessment cluster, is all about the language we use to judge whether that action was, any good. Was it accurate? Was it ethical?
Precisely. The language of assessment is critical. You can't have high-level discussion without judging quality, establishing standards. So we start with the basics of measuring quality and value. Evaluate, exemplify, and the rather negative mediocre.
Right. Evaluate seems foundational. To judge or determine value, assess, appraise. The example was, examiners evaluate essays based on clarity and structure. So it implies a careful, probably systematic comparison against some kind of benchmark, right?
Exactly. And those benchmarks, those standards, are often defined by what exemplifies them. To exemplify is to be a perfect example of something. To illustrate it, represent the ideal.
Oh, okay.
You might say, his meticulous research and clear writing exemplify good academic practice, or her calm leadership during the crisis exemplifies true professionalism.
So when you evaluate something, you're often looking for the parts that exemplify success, and maybe, by contrast, identifying where it falls short.
Which leads us neatly to mediocre. Average, or maybe more critically, of pretty low quality. The team delivered a mediocre performance, lacking energy and coordination.
It sounds quite damning, actually, more than just average.
It often is, yeah. In academic or professional contexts, mediocre isn't just in the middle. It usually carries a sense of disappointment, like it failed to meet the expected standard. It can imply a lack of effort or maybe a lack of insight or originality. It's definitely not a compliment.
Okay. Noted. Avoid mediocre.
Yeah.
Right, let's move to the absolute opposite end of the scale, the peak of quality. We've got two really strong synonyms here for perfection: flawless and impeccable. Now, in C2 English, if you have two words that seem almost identical, there's usually a tiny crucial difference, isn't there?
Oh, always. And this is a perfect example of that need for linguistic precision. Flawless generally means perfect in execution, without any mistakes or defects. Often relates to something technical or maybe physical appearance.
Like a diamond.
A diamond could be flawless, yes. Or think about performance. She gave a flawless piano recital. Technically perfect, no wrong notes. Or the surgeon performed a flawless procedure.
Okay. Technically perfect, but impeccable. I don't know, it feels like it has more weight somehow. It also means faultless, perfect, but deeper. Is that right?
Yeah, you're definitely onto something. You're touching on its historical roots, actually. Impeccable originally came from Latin, meaning without sin, morally faultless.
Oh.
Now, today, we obviously use it more broadly. You can talk about impeccable tailoring on a suit or impeccable service at a hotel, but it still often carries that extra layer, that connotation of meeting an extremely high standard, sometimes a moral or ethical one, or one related to taste or decorum that goes beyond just being technically correct.
So you might talk about someone having impeccable manners.
Exactly. Or impeccable integrity, impeccable taste. It signals a really high personal standard or maybe a deeply ingrained quality. So if a performance is flawless, it was executed perfectly. If someone's reasoning is impeccable, it suggests it's logically sound and perhaps ethically grounded, almost unassailable.
That distinction is incredibly useful.
Wow.
Flawless, objective perfection in execution. Impeccable suggests a higher, almost faultless quality standard, often touching on character or deep structure.
You've got it. Now let's turn to the language of truth versus error. We have erroneous and legitimate.
Erroneous. That sounds like the formal, serious way of saying wrong or incorrect. Mistaken, inaccurate. The report contains several erroneous statistics. When we're reading sources critically, spotting erroneous information is key, right?
Absolutely fundamental. Academic work, scientific research. It's essentially a constant process of trying to identify and eliminate erroneous assumptions or data to get closer to reliable conclusions. Using the word erroneous signals that it's not just a minor slip-up like a typo. It's a conceptual flaw, a factual inaccuracy, something that really undermines the argument or finding.
Okay. And the counterpoint to error is validity, which is where legitimate comes in. Lawful, acceptable, justified. The investigation uncovered several legitimate grounds for concern.
Exactly. Legitimate is a validating word. It takes a claim or a concern or an action from just being someone's opinion to being something grounded in acceptable facts or law or some kind of justifiable reasoning. For a new policy to be accepted, it needs to have a legitimate basis. For a complaint to be taken seriously, it needs to raise legitimate issues.
It gives it weight. Authority.
It does. And finally, within this assessment cluster, we need to tackle the ethical dimension. This really underpins the whole idea of evaluation. We have integrity and its dark twin, hypocrisy.
Integrity. Sounds like a cornerstone. Strong moral principles, honesty. The source mentioned academic integrity, basically the honesty and ethical standards you need in research, like not plagiarizing.
Right. And without that fundamental integrity in the process, whether it's research or politics or business, all those evaluations we just talked about, well, they become pretty meaningless, don't they? Trust evaporates.
It does. And when that trust is broken, especially publicly, we get to that really heavy, powerful term, hypocrisy. Pretending to hold beliefs or standards that you don't actually follow in your actions. Critics accuse a politician of blatant hypocrisy after the corruption scandal emerged.
Yeah, notice the weight of hypocrisy. It's not just garden variety inconsistency. It implies deliberate deception, intentional insincerity. It's seen as a profound failure of public trust, maybe even private trust. When you accuse someone of hypocrisy, you're essentially trying to dismantle their credibility. You're suggesting their public persona, their manifestation, well, we'll get to that word, is a lie, built on a foundation lacking integrity. These two words are absolute anchors in any serious ethical discussion.
Definitely feel the weight of those.
Okay.
So we've assessed actions and principles. Let's move now into the movement cluster. This sounds like the language we use to describe how things change, grow, shrink, intensify, maybe across economics, society, even physical processes.
That's right, dynamics, how things shift. And we'll start with 3 distinct ways things can increase or grow, each carrying its own specific flavor: escalate, flourish, and generate.
Okay, escalate, that sounds fast.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit worrying. To increase rapidly, become more intense. Tensions between the two nations began to escalate. Or production costs escalated unexpectedly. It often seems to imply a rapid increase that's problematic, maybe getting out of control.
Often, yes. It frequently signals a negative or worrying intensification, escalating conflict, escalating prices, escalating problems. Now contrast that sharply with flourish.
Oh, that sounds much nicer.
It does. To flourish is to grow or develop successfully. To thrive, prosper, bloom. The art scene began to flourish with new government funding. Or certain types of businesses flourish in a deregulated market. Flourish implies healthy, robust, often organic growth, and it usually suggests that the conditions are right for that success.
So a trade war might cause tensions to escalate, but a period of peace and investment allows international trade to flourish, almost opposite dynamics.
Exactly. The connotations are poles apart. And then we have generate. This is perhaps more neutral. Simply the verb for producing or causing something. To produce, create yield. Wind farms generate renewable electricity. Or the project is expected to generate significant employment.
So it's often used for large-scale production or creating outcomes.
Very often, yes. Scientific contexts, technical fields, economic outputs. It's the more formal, often larger scale version of just make or create. The C2 value comes from that formality and the typical scale it implies.
Yeah. Now let's look at, maybe the less desirable side of change. Amplification, exaggeration. We've got 2 words here that often seem to describe distortion. Inflate and magnify.
Yes, and they're often used critically. Inflate means to increase something beyond its normal or perhaps justifiable size or level, often suggests exaggeration or artificiality. Think of economic bubbles again. Speculation inflated asset prices to unsustainable levels. It implies the size is puffed up, maybe not real or lasting.
Like blowing up a balloon too much.
Kind of, yeah. And magnify means to make something appear larger or more significant than it actually is, like using a magnifying glass. The media coverage tended to magnify the senator's minor gaffe.
So they seem quite similar in effect, making things seem bigger than they are.
They often work hand in hand, especially when you're analyzing, say, media narratives or social dynamics. The media might inflate the importance of a particular event, and then social media algorithms magnify that inflated story, spreading it rapidly and making it seem like the only thing people are talking about. Both words are crucial tools for critical analysis, for suggesting that the perceived scale of an issue might be distorted by how it's being presented or discussed.
Right. Inflate the bubble, magnify the view. Got it. Okay, we've done rapid growth, escalate, healthy growth, flourish, production, generate, and artificial enlargement, inflate, magnify. Now for the opposite, things that hinder or damage. We need to be careful here, distinguishing between impair and inhibit. They sound similar.
They do, but the distinction is really important at the C2 level. To impair something means to weaken or damage its actual function, to harm its capacity.
Okay, damage the mechanism itself.
Exactly. Hearing loss can significantly impair communication, or lack of sleep impairs cognitive function. The ability itself is compromised, damaged.
Right, so impairment is damage to the system.
Yeah.
What about inhibit then?
To inhibit is more about slowing down or preventing an action. It's about restraining or discouraging performance, even if the underlying capacity is still there.
Ah, okay, so the ability might exist, but something stops it from being used.
Precisely. Think back to the IELTS example. Fear of making mistakes can inhibit students from speaking freely. The student probably knows the grammar, the vocabulary, the capacity is there, but an external factor, like fear or maybe internal shyness or even restrictive rules, holds them back. It restrains the execution.
Okay, that makes the distinction crystal clear now. So a physical injury might impair an athlete's ability to run.
Damage to the body, yes.
But a lack of confidence might inhibit them from entering the race in the first place.
Perfect example, damage versus restraint. That fine detail allows for much more precise discussions about why things aren't working or happening as expected.
Super useful.
Yeah.
Okay, we've covered the mechanics of action, assessment, and change. Now we're moving into what feels like the most sophisticated territory yet, the nuance cluster. This sounds like it's all about complexity, hidden meanings, implication, the tricky stuff between the lines.
Exactly. In really high-level communication diplomacy, law, even complex business negotiations, being precise about clarity or the lack of it is absolutely everything. So we start with a fundamental contrast. Explicit versus implicit.
Right, explicit. That seems straightforward enough. Stated clearly, directly, definite. No room for doubt. The contract laid out the terms of payment in explicit detail, or safety regulations must be explicit to prevent accidents. Law, science instruction manuals, they need explicit language, right?
They absolutely demand it. Ambiguity can be dangerous or costly. But then you have implicit. This means it's implied, suggested, but not stated directly. It's indirect. You have to read between the lines.
Like subtext.
Very much like subtext. Although the novel never directly mentions war, there's an implicit critique of conflict throughout the story. The reader has to connect the dots, infer the meaning from the context, the tone, the imagery.
The real C2 skill here, I guess, is understanding why a communicator would choose one over the other. Sometimes ambiguity is deliberate, isn't it? A politician might make an implicit promise that they can later deny because it wasn't explicit.
Precisely. Or a writer might use implicit meaning to create more depth or allow for multiple interpretations. Understanding that choice is key to sophisticated analysis. Now let's connect complexity with understanding. Intricate and insightful.
Intricate. Sounds like complex, but maybe with more emphasis on the details. Very detailed and complex, elaborate, complicated. The tapestry featured an incredibly intricate pattern, or the plot of the mystery novel was highly intricate. It really focuses on the sheer level of detail and how the parts connect, often in a complex way.
Exactly. The complexity arises from the many interconnected parts. And to understand something that's truly intricate, you need to be
Insightful.
You got it. Insightful, showing deep understanding, perceptive, wise, astute. Her analysis of the economic data was remarkably insightful. An insightful person doesn't just see the separate components of an intricate system. They grasp how those components interact, what drives the whole thing. They see the deeper patterns.
So the two words are like two sides of the same coin for understanding complex things. The subject itself might be intricate, and your analysis of it needs to be insightful.
A perfect summary. Now let's shift to the difference between internal states and how things appear externally. We'll look at harbor, manifestation, and metaphor.
Okay, harbor. Like a ship in a harbor. Keeping something safe, hidden. To keep something in mind, secretly conceal, nurture, shelter an idea, an emotion, maybe a grudge. He still harbors resentment over the decision. Or, she secretly harbors a desire to travel the world. It's internal, quiet, maybe even hidden from others.
That's the core idea. It's held within. But often what someone harbors internally eventually finds its way out, and that outward sign is a manifestation.
So it becomes visible.
Right. A manifestation is a clear sign or example of something, an expression, a display, a demonstration. The widespread strikes were a clear manifestation of worker dissatisfaction, or his sudden burst of creativity was a manifestation of his newfound confidence. The secret ambition she harbored for years, its manifestation might be finally enrolling in that course.
Okay, internal thought or feeling, harbor, leads to external action or sign manifestation. And when we describe that external reality or even the internal feeling, we often need powerful language tools.
Indeed. Which brings us to metaphor, a figure of speech where you describe one thing as if it were something else, to make a comparison or create a vivid image, a symbol, an image. The CEO said the company was a ship navigating stormy seas, or the poet used the metaphor of a caged bird to describe loneliness. Metaphors are absolutely essential tools for conveying deeper, often implicit meaning behind the situation or feeling the manifestation.
They add color, depth,
Yeah.
help us grasp complex ideas.
Got it. Okay, our final pair in this nuance cluster deals with emotional impact, how communication or situations make us feel, intimidate, and gratify.
Right. To intimidate is to frighten or overawe someone, maybe make them feel less powerful or confident. To scare, threaten, bully. This links back nicely to inhibit, actually.
Yeah, I see that.
The complexity of the task seemed to intimidate the new employees, or some students feel intimidated when speaking with native speakers, which, as we said, can inhibit their fluency. It's often about a perceived power imbalance that leads to restraint or fear.
Makes sense. And the positive flip side, gratify. To please or satisfy. Exactly. It gratifies teachers to see their students succeed, or receiving praise for her hard work clearly gratified her. It's about that feeling of satisfaction, often because effort has been recognized or a desire has been fulfilled. It validates the effort someone endeavored to exert, maybe reinforcing their motivation.
Okay. Feeling scared, intimidate, versus feeling pleased, gratify. Clear emotional opposites. Right. That brings us to our final and actually largest group of words. This cluster seems to define the very context and absolute requirements of situations. You've called it the foundational cluster.
That's right. This cluster provides the foundations. The words that define location, status, structure, permanence, necessity, time, the framework within which everything else happens. We'll start with status and context. Forefront, exotic, and indigenous.
Forefront. That sounds like being right at the front, the leading edge, the leading position, vanguard. This research institute is at the forefront of developing new medical technologies. Using forefront immediately tells you this subject is a pioneer. It's defining the cutting edge in its field. Significant.
Very significant. Then we use context to talk about origin, contrasting exotic and indigenous. Exotic means unusual, often attractive because it's from a distant foreign place. The market sold exotic fruits from South America. It clearly denotes something introduced, not native, maybe rare or unfamiliar.
Okay. Foreign, different. Whereas indigenous is the opposite, native to a particular place. Local, original. Canada is working on reconciliation with its indigenous peoples.
Exactly. And the C2 level insight here is really recognizing the weight these terms carry, especially in discussions about culture, environment, or politics, talking about, say, the impact of exotic invasive plant species on indigenous wildlife,
Right.
or discussing the preservation of indigenous languages versus the influence of global cultures. Using these words precisely shows a deep understanding of biological, cultural, or historical context. They're not just simple descriptors.
Definitely loaded terms in many contexts.
Yeah.
Okay. Shifting from origin to structure and permanence. We have framework and establish.
Right. A framework is the basic supporting structure. It's the outline, the system, the skeleton that holds things together. The treaty provides a framework for international cooperation on climate change. It's not usually the detailed policy itself, but the conceptual structure, the guidelines that shape all the actions within that area.
The essential underpinning, you called it earlier.
Exactly. And when you create that underpinning, or maybe a significant institution, you establish it to set up, create, found something, usually with the intention of permanence and legitimacy. The university was established in the 19th century, or they established clear rules of procedure. Established transforms an idea or plan into a recognized, often lasting reality.
Okay. Structure, framework, and creation of permanence establish. Now for two really powerful words about certainty and requirement. Indispensable and inevitable. These feel absolute.
They are very strong. Indispensable means absolutely necessary, essential, vital, crucial. You simply cannot do without it. Clean water is indispensable for human life. Or a strong internet connection is indispensable for remote work. If you remove the indispensable element, the whole system or situation it supports basically collapses. It focuses on current non-negotiable need.
Cannot live without it.
Right.
But inevitable.
Yeah.
That means something different, doesn't it? Certain to happen. Unavoidable, inescapable, destined. Many argue that further economic globalization is inevitable, or change is an inevitable part of life. This word isn't about current need, it's about future certainty, something that will happen no matter what.
That's the crucial distinction, future certainty.
So something can be indispensable right now, but its decline might still be inevitable in the long run. For example, maybe certain fossil fuels are still indispensable for our current energy grid.
For now, yes.
But many would argue their eventual replacement by renewables is inevitable due to climate concerns and technological advances. Using them together like that shows that contrast.
Absolutely. That kind of phrasing demonstrates real linguistic control. Understanding that difference between absolute necessity now, indispensable, and absolute certainty later, inevitable, is key.
Okay. We also need words for time and focus. We have imminent, incessant, and irrelevant.
Right. Imminent is all about time specifically, something about to happen very soon, impending, approaching, near. Meteorologists warned of an imminent hurricane landfall. It conveys urgency, short-term certainty. Something's just around the corner.
Yeah, soon. Incessant sounds. Tiring. Continuing without interruption. Constant, nonstop, continual. The incessant ringing of the phone drove them crazy, or they faced incessant demands from the client. It usually has a negative feel, doesn't it? Describing something draining or annoying that just won't stop.
Very often, yes. Incessant noise, incessant rain, incessant complaints. It implies a wearisome lack of pause. And then the opposite of being connected or important. Irrelevant, not related, unconnected, beside the point. Please stick to the main points and avoid irrelevant details in your presentation. In sophisticated debate or writing, labeling something as irrelevant is quite a sharp move. It dismisses its connection to the core, explicit argument you're making.
Cuts it off. Right. Okay, we're nearing the end of the list. We just need to cover the remaining descriptive words, things defining results, measurements, character. We have milestone, lucrative, feeble, equate, and enumerate. Quite a mix.
A bit of a mix, yeah, rounding things out. Let's take milestone first. That's a significant point or event in development or progress, a landmark, a breakthrough, a major achievement along a longer path. Graduating from university was a major milestone in her life. Or securing the first round of funding was a critical milestone for the startup. It marks important, defined progress towards a bigger goal.
Okay, a marker on the journey. And if that journey leads to financial success, lucrative, producing a lot of profit, profitable, rewarding, fruitful. The tech industry can be highly lucrative for skilled engineers. Or investing in renewable energy proved to be a lucrative decision. It specifically describes significant economic gain.
That's its main focus, yes. Economic profitability, often at scale. Now, we talked about strong arguments and integrity earlier. Here's the opposite. Feeble, lacking strength. Weak, frail, maybe unconvincing. He made a feeble attempt to excuse his mistake, or the signal was too feeble to make a call. Feeble can apply to physical strength, light, sound, or, very often, arguments or efforts, always indicating a significant lack of power or effectiveness.
Weak. Got it. Next, enumerate. This sounds purely structural. To list things one by one. Itemize, specify. The report enumerates the key factors contributing to the problem. It's the formal, systematic way of saying listing. It lends structure and clarity, especially when dealing with multiple points.
Exactly. It signals a clear point-by-point presentation. And finally, a verb that's really crucial for analyzing comparisons, especially in social or philosophical discussions, equate. To equate means to consider one thing as being the same as or equivalent to another.
Ah, like saying X equals Y. Some people mistakenly equate net worth with self-worth. Or, we should not equate disagreement with disrespect.
Precisely. And notice, as in your examples, using equate often opens the door to questioning that very comparison. Is it valid? Is it fair? Or is it perhaps an erroneous assumption to consider these two things equal? It allows you to analyze a perceived equality, often critically.
Wow, okay. We have really covered a lot of ground there. 5 major clusters: action, assessment, change, nuance, and structure. We took those 50 C2 words, and instead of just a flat list of definitions, we've tried to build this interconnected network of meaning.
And that really is the essence of moving towards true fluency, isn't it? It's not just knowing the definition, it's understanding the function, the relationships, how hypocrisy fundamentally undermines integrity, how flourishing is the positive counterpart to impairment, how something can be indispensable today but still face an inevitable future tomorrow. Grasping those connections gives you immediate, articulate control over much more sophisticated English.
We've hopefully provided the conceptual framework, as you called it, and put these words into useful contexts. But, as the original source reminded us, repetition turns vocabulary into fluency. So the next step is really for you, the listener, to start integrating these. You have to exert the effort now.
That's the key. Active use. And maybe here's a final thought to reflect on using some of these words. We discuss how automation is seen by many as an inevitable outcome of technological progress, and how certain types of human labor, while perhaps currently indispensable, might become less so. So the provocative question is this. If automation makes much of current human labor less indispensable, what new societal milestone, maybe in education or creative work or community contribution or even leisure, should humanity be actively endeavoring to reach? What new social or economic frameworks might this entail? It's a complex question, but thinking about it might just help make some of this potentially lucrative, powerful vocabulary stick.